Hello and welcome to the Real Women, Real Purpose talk show live in the On Purpose Woman magazine and global community Facebook page. I'm Ginny Robertson, one of the hosts of the Real Women, Real Purpose talk show, where we talk about real women who are living their lives on purpose and bringing their unique gifts to the planet. I'm also the founder and publisher of On Purpose Woman magazine and the founder of the On Purpose Woman global community. I'm here with writing mentor, teacher, and creative coach, Carol Burbank, and we'll be talking about Before We Disappear, the power of memoir and the joy of sharing your story. Thanks for being here with me, Carol.
Thanks.
I'm excited to dive into this topic with you, but I first want to tell our viewers a little more about you. Carol Burbank is a professional writer helping creatives thrive with story weaving writing, mentoring, and coaching. She runs the Storyweaving Retreat Center with space for personal recharge intensives. In 2021, she launched the Storyweaving Memoir Project to offer a soup to nuts service to produce a beautiful professional memoir that shares your authentic stories with family, friends, and others. So, Carol, let's start out this question. For anyone who may not be crystal clear, what is the difference between an autobiography and a memoir?
That's a great question, Ginny, because I don't think a lot of people know the answer. So we normally think of anything where we share our story that you've got to start with, Carol was born in the city of, and then, and now she lives in, but that's not actually a memoir.
And everything in between, right? Everything in between.
And everything in between. Yeah. But that's an autobiography. An autobiography and an autobiography is usually written by someone after someone has passed or after someone has had an illustrious career. And it takes a lot of research and a lot of time and a lot of energy. That's very different from memoir. Memoirs are focused stories that take a time in a person's life and shape a beautifully crafted, focused journey for a reader through that time in a person's life. And they're always very focused. So for example, they're about a certain issue as it ran through a person's life, or they're about the first 3 years of teaching, or they're about my marriage, or they're about what it means to raise kids to me, or they're about my adventure in China. They're about a piece of our lives or a focus or an issue in our lives. And all memoirs have a theme, whether they span a longer period of time or for a short period of time.
So what do you mean by a theme? Say a little bit more about that.
Well, a theme is a message, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So all memoirs have a theme or explore a certain kind of issue. So there are a lot of memoirs out there now about childhood trauma and its impact on adult life.
Mm-hmm.
Or there are memoirs about finding out something really exotic or interesting. One of my favorite memoirs is Suzanne Simard's book, Finding the Mother Tree, which is about Suzanne Simard's journey to discover the vast and intelligent network that is underneath the roots of trees in a healthy forest and that feeds and informs the whole forest. But the story is of what personal things she went through, as well as the discoveries she made. So the theme is, this transformative information that changed my life took place at a time when my life was changing and transforming. And so it's all about how ideas and lives transform. And that would be a theme.
Okay. So a memoir can actually also be instructional, though, to the reader. It can help them maybe learn something or see something rather than just entertainment. If you
Sure.
will.
They can be very inspiring. They can be educational. Yeah.
Okay. So you started the Storyweaving Memoir Project last year. And
I did.
It's a new thing, really. And how did you start that and why?
Well, what happened is, as often, innovative things often happen because there's a prompt from the world. Mm-hmm. And a very, very good friend of mine contacted me and said, my husband wants to write a memoir. And he was in hospice and dying from cancer. And she called me because I'm a writing coach and I help people publish books. And she wanted to know, what should we do? And I thought, no, we should write his memoir. So I got a team of people together, including her daughter, who recorded interviews with her husband because he wasn't really capable of writing it down himself. And her, who gathered up all the images, and my book designer and me. And we turned around a book in record time. Within 3 months, we had the book from soup to nuts. And he held it in his hands before he passed. And when he held it in his hands, he said, "I'm okay with dying now," or something to that effect. He said, I'm okay. Look, I won't be forgotten. And everybody was so moved that he was so happy that it had been done. There was an urgency for him. Before I disappear, before I die. I mean, there's a lot of ways to disappear that aren't death. But for him, he wanted to know that someone could remember him and remember the stories that mattered to him in that moment. And the great thing was, we produced the book. It was beautiful, a beautiful book. And it was during the pandemic. And no one could go to Tom's funeral, but he had a million best friends. And so his wife produced through Ingram Spark, which is the publisher I like to use, produced a number of books. And instead of a funeral, she sent them as a memorial gift to all the friends who couldn't attend the funeral during that time. And then they had a formal gathering after the pandemic allowed it. So it became a way of celebrating his life that he could feel and that all the people who loved him could feel. And when that happened, I thought, wow, how many people are there who die or change or move or silence our stories, whose stories could be that powerful in the world to ourselves as well as others. And so I launched the Memoir Project, and I'm working on a project right now about a woman who is, she has a bird sanctuary, and she's telling the stories of the lives of the birds that she's saved and experienced throughout her time at the sanctuary. So it isn't always about end of life, or it can be about middle of life. It can be about, I want to really share this story with the world. I just want people to feel that they have the support that they need to get their stories out there in a way that is a good book, not just some kind of a quickly put together template.
Yeah, like a little scrapbook or something with notes. Yes. Wow, that you kind of, I've heard the story before, but it hit me differently this time for some reason. It was like, okay, mascara, it's just
it was
very story.
It's very touching, and it really matters to the family that they did this.
Yes,
like their whole family was more at peace, and certainly Tom was too.
And like you say, it doesn't have to be that dramatic a purpose in doing it. But I think what you're doing with this project and just talking about it here, you're opening up people's minds about why they might want to, or who've never thought of, I've never thought about a memoir before. I've thought about writing a book about something, but certainly not about me.
Well, and we all think, oh, well, my life isn't interesting. Or we think, oh, my life is interesting, but writing a book, I don't have time. Or we think, oh, my life is interesting, but the only people who are going to really care about it are my family or my friends, or sometimes my family doesn't care about what I experienced before they came along. And there's a lot of reasons that we talk ourselves out of writing our memoirs. And I think that the empowerment that comes from actually telling the stories that matter to us it's priceless.
Yeah. So you've kind of gone into my next question, which is going to be about, what do you say to those people who think they don't have anything to say, or who would want to read it, or maybe it's only my family? Can you go a little bit deeper with that, and just like, what do you say to those people, and how do you maybe talk them down if you kind of know they want to, but yet they haven't convinced themselves yet?
Well, the first thing I say is that we can design a memoir. We can create a memoir for whatever purpose you want. So if it's only for your family, that's not to say we shouldn't produce a beautiful book. Or if it's only for your friends, or if it's only for your community, your church community, and it's going to be a small press release. If you want to share your story and you want to get that impact out there, you have to share your story. And if someone from within has an urge to share their story before they've forgotten it, or before they're no longer around to tell it, then now is the time to do it. To people who say, I'm just an ordinary person, I just want my kids to know more about me, or I'm just an ordinary person, I don't think anybody would want to read it. I say they should rethink that, bottom line. Because there's a great quote by Albert Einstein, sorry, I said that in a way that you might not hear it. Albert Einstein said, I have no great talents. I'm just passionately curious.
Yes.
If Einstein had said when he was a young man or whatever, I'm really curious, but that means I shouldn't engage my purpose. That means I shouldn't follow my impulse. Then we would never have had Einstein. We would have never have had the adventure that Einstein introduced us to, and the incredibly diverse and interesting life that he led. So when a lot of famous people don't think they're particularly interesting. The people we find interesting don't think they're interesting. The people who think they are not interesting and are, quote, ordinary people often have a lot to share, especially if they get out of their, all I do is cook kind of headspace, right? Mm-hmm. All I do should be a word taken out of our vocabulary.
Or I'm only.
I'm only. We should replace it with I love. Mm-hmm. And then fill in the blank. And then when we realize what we love, then that's what we can share.
You have me thinking about the people I wished had written a memoir in my life. So that also amps up the importance, I think, to me a bit. Like, I wish I knew that story, or I wish my father had written that down so that I could have it now, and the people after me could have it. So it's a really exciting project, I think, and just something that I can tell you're extremely passionate about.
It's so much fun to learn people's stories, and I've put together a team of interviewers and people are getting, and some of my clients are getting photographers to do new portraits of themselves, or I mean, there's just so much, and what it does is it awakens a presence in the world of the person. And so, yes, I wish my father had written down some of his memories. I'm glad I can ask my mother questions about her life. But if she were to write a memoir, just like anybody else, she would say something that was really specific to her that she might not say to me if I just ask her a question. And that's the other cool thing about a memoir, because if you sit down and you say, what is it I really want to say? I really want people to know about this part of my life, or I really want people to know that this wisdom I have, this is how I learned this wisdom. This is how, and yes, it's wisdom. For those of you out there thinking, I'm not wise, you are wise. You have ideas to impart. Put whatever word you want in there for wisdom, but we have something to share and inspire other people. And another reason I wanted to create this project is that with my skills and the skills of my team, we produce a book that is not only attractive and professional, but it's also interesting. And it carries the person's voice, because as an editor and as a writing coach, that's my passion. I want them to feel their voice in what they write. And in a memoir, that's particularly important. And a lot of services, which are quite fine and very professional, they just sort of say, okay, what's your story? Bubbity, bubbity, bubbity. There you go. I've written it. Now your story is out there. And that's satisfying. But when it's in your voice and you've been facilitated to create a book, when you hold it in your hand, you go, oh yes, this feels like me. That's what I want my people to feel. Because what do we want to share in the world? Ourselves.
Yeah.
And that's what a great memoir does, whether it's for the larger audience or whether it's for an audience of family.
Well, I know that you want people to feel this excitement about telling their story and writing their memoir. And one of the ways I see that you do that is through your own excitement, because you have me excited about something, and I wasn't feeling excited about that particular thing. I was excited about the interview, but not about possibilities. How do you help them find that excitement as their professional writing mentor?
Well, the first thing I do is find out what they're passionate about sharing, and find a way to let them know that they're partnered in creating that piece. So, for example, Tom couldn't write his own book, so he needed his daughter to interview him and needed that support. But Tom knew he was partnered, and he also knew that we really cared about the project. So I do that as a writing mentor. Now, the current book, she actually is doing a lot of the writing herself. She doesn't want to be interviewed. She wants to write because that's her best process. And so we're working on making sure that her writing is as strong and as authentic as possible. And so throughout the process, we just go deeper and deeper into the purpose for the process for the person who's doing it. And I work with people where they are. So some people want to meet once a week just to keep the momentum of a project going. And some people just are content just handing in great chunks of interviews and writing, and then seeing what they look like on the chapters. Whatever it takes, I want the people who are investing their time and energy into these memoirs to know that I care as much about their story as they do. And I do, I really do. That's why I chose to pursue this profession of being a writing mentor and a supporter, because writing is very lonely. And writing a memoir can be very lonely too, because we always run up against this wall where we go, is anybody going to care about this? And the thing is, I've read so many books about so many things that I never thought I would care about. And then I read it and I think, wow, I never knew I could care about this. This is so exciting because it's prepared and presented really well. Mm-hmm. So that's how I do it. I invest in the project as a mentor and a supporter and a partner.
Is it less daunting then to people also, this piece of, okay, we're going to have a theme, and so everything that you write about or speak about will be tied into that in some way, rather than, oh, well, I've got to figure out the most important parts of my life and write that down, right?
Right. Because they're telling a story that has a momentum behind it that isn't just, and then this happened, and then that happened, which is never very interesting.
Right. It becomes more like a task list or something. Well, you also help people focus their writing on stories that will pop with readers. You've talked a little bit about that, but what are the chances, do you think, of someone just writing this memoir like your friend's husband, and then other people picking it up and going, wow, this is really great. I'm learning something. I care about this story. I don't even know this man, and I care about this story. So
well, that actually happened with Tom's memoir too.
Did it?
So
okay.
People have passed it on.
Yeah.
Tom's memoir had a lot of great insights into it. One of my favorites was this long story he told about his first job and how he just kind of kept guessing what he was supposed to do and improvising. And then he talked a little bit about how that's how you succeed in life. You just guess and improvise and hope for the best and be optimistic. And several people who have read the memoir outside of Tom's immediate circle have said, oh yeah, I really loved that message that he showed there. And I loved his passion for his family. And but I have another person who's writing a memoir that's a book of essays. So that doesn't always have to be a and then story. And her book of essays, which is almost completed, and she's looking for a publisher. It's not in the Before I Disappear project. It was from before. But her book of essays has the theme, I've had an adventurous life, so can you. And she writes these really funny stories of these adventures she's had. And they're like, they pop up like popcorn. That's a book like popcorn. Boop, 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 boop. And how do you make a book pop? You know what you want to say as an umbrella. And then you find a way to say it so that the reader just is sucked right into the story. And I help people do that by helping them talk through their ideas, supporting them with editing and ideas for other stories and ways they could add to their stories, because so many of us, we sell our stories short. We make our stories disappear as we tell them. Another example, I cook all the time. You don't want to know anything about my cooking if I say it that way. But if I say, every single night I play with recipes to surprise my family, you want to know more.
Mm-hmm.
So I help people get to the point where they naturally are beginning to make that popcorn effect.
Wow. I love that. So many thoughts are going through my head right now. I don't even know what to ask you next. What should I ask you next?
I think you should
What
ask
else
me
do you
why
want to
write
say?
Go ahead.
So what else do you want to say about this process? Or, do you have an ideal type of person that you think that you really want to work with? Or
Well, what I want to say about the process is the why of doing it. I called it before. I want to tell you why I called it Before I Disappear. I called it Before I Disappear because one Christmas, it was a lovely Christmas. I'm not complaining about that Christmas celebration at all. But there was a whole day where no one asked me anything about my life. And I asked a ton of people about their lives because I love my family and I felt a great deal of love. But I went up to bed and I thought, no one asked me about my life. And then I wrote an essay called Before I Disappear. And I thought, what is it I would want to tell the world that no one has asked me before I disappear? Because in a way, I had kind of disappeared just for that 24 hours, right? I was a little invisible and I was making myself invisible. I want to own that. I wasn't saying, hey, I'm going to tell a story about my life that your story reminded me of. I started doing that afterwards. And then they all started asking me about myself. But I thought of that title Before I Disappear. And my mother and I were talking. She was visiting me. She's 91. And I said, well, I'm calling it Before I Disappear because, and I told her this little story. And she said, tell me about it. And I said, what do you mean, Mom? And she said, no one ever asked. She wasn't whining. I said, do people not ask you about yourself? She said, no, well, most of the people I talk with only want to talk about themselves. And few people ask me about my life. And I know for a fact that my mother has amazing stories to tell. She's had a fascinating life and I adore her. So I said, wow, it's a good title because we disappear ourselves like I did that Christmas, but we also sometimes disappear because of ageism, or we disappear because of sexism, or we disappear because the person who's with us assumes we're just going to be generous all the time and listen to them. And we do. We can choose that. So I wanted to tell that story because that brings us to the question, why write a memoir? And a lot of people want to write a memoir to heal something that happened to them in the past. Or they want to write a memoir because they are passionate about sharing an idea, or they just want to tell these great stories like my adventurous client wants to tell these great stories about her life, how they had a wedding with 2 goats at Martha's Vineyard and how wonderful and funny it was. And it is a hysterical chapter. And how much pleasure that will give them to share. Or in my case, if I write a memoir, it'll be because there's stories that I didn't tell my family, that they didn't ask about, but that I would love them to know. And writing is another way of sharing those stories because I can craft it and I won't be interrupted.
Right.
So why memoir? There are a million reasons. And it helps us learn to value our own stories and our lives. Because the biggest reason we disappear, Ginny, is that we make ourselves invisible, especially women, because we're so giving and we devalue our own stories and insights. And I think it's time we just stop it, because we all have taken risks and we've all had adventures and we've all made choices and we've all loved our lives or hated parts of them, but it's all interesting.
That's a mission. It's a mission for you. I see that.
Yeah.
And yeah, you're right. We have either shut down or played small or gotten quiet, either because of people around us. And if for me, children were to be seen and not heard. And I was a good girl. I towed the line. I did all the things right until I didn't have to. But then nobody knew that I didn't. You know what I mean? I wasn't about to write that story. But then we go out into the world and we're expected to perform in the world with those old ideas that says, I'm not really a very interesting person, or what would I say? Why would anybody care about me? And that just gets old. It gets old. Breaks my heart when I hear women say that. And I just want to like, I don't want to slap them because I'm not a violent person. I just want to say, wake up, wake up. Everybody has something. Everybody has something of value to share.
And another assumption we make, Ginny, is that our lives are the same as other lives. So let's take the example of, a lot of people get married and have long-term marriages. And every single married person thinks everyone else, at some point in their lives, they think everyone else has the same kind of marriage, has the same kind of life that I have, has the same kind of insights about love. It's ordinary to be married. Well, I tell you, as a single person, it is not ordinary to be married. And every single married person I know has a different kind of marriage. And so I love learning about the unique experiences of my married friends and my partnered friends. And when I have a partner, sharing those stories as well, because it's such fun to swap stories and share ideas. They are valuable because they are unique, even though our heads say they are, everybody does it. Well, they don't ever do it the way you do.
Yeah.
And getting to the meat of what makes your stories unique is so much fun, because people say, oh yeah, wait, you mean not everybody travels the world with their partner? And you go, no, some people never travel at all. Oh my gosh. Well, you know what I learned from traveling, blah, 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 blah. The floodgates open, and such joy to hear those stories. And it's valuable because even if the story, and even if it's a weird way of putting it, because when someone chooses to share their story, whether it's with someone that they love or with a larger group of people, because I know that the memoirs, are going to be people who want to publish the book and market the book, and people who just want to share it with their family and their community. And both of those are equally valid solutions. And my goal is to make it professional, affordable, and authentic. And something people can hold in their hand. And like Tom said, I really have lived. I've lived.
His life mattered. He knows
his life matters so much.
Yeah.
And then he knew it. And it's just exciting. And I personally love hearing all these stories. So of course, that's why it's part of my mission, because then I get to hear all these great stories and go, oh, tell me more.
And so you have a unique gift for that. So you don't get bored with the story. You just try to pull out the more interesting story, right?
Yeah.
If there is one.
Bored, I'm not afraid to say, this part of the story isn't so interesting, but I think there's a story behind it. And they go, well, yeah, but I don't want to tell it. Which
somebody has to die for me to tell that story, right?
Why are some people afraid to write a memoir? And that's a really good question that you talked about a little bit earlier. And I just want to say, I believe that we should be able to tell whatever stories are important for us to tell. And there are ways of telling them that are healthy for us and for the reader. So there are a lot of people who have secrets, and there are a lot of people who have had bad experiences or traumatic experiences, and it's hard to translate those stories into writing sometimes. And that's another thing that you want to have a writing mentor with, because the loneliness of sitting and writing makes those stories that make you think, oh, I could never write a memoir because what I have to say is difficult. Well, that probably makes it even more interesting and valuable for the world. So we hesitate for a million reasons. And especially for women, I think that when we lose the stories of our lives, when we don't share them with the world, that is, we lose something really precious in the world, because we make ourselves invisible again, which is just sad.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. So on a brighter note, tell everyone how they can get in touch with you or find out more information about this project. And I believe you have something special you want to offer today.
I do. So you can find out more about the Memoir Project on my website, which is www.storyweaving.com, STORYWEAVING, weaving, story weaving. So it's storyweaving.com, and it's memoir support. So it's storyweaving.com, and then just click on memoir in the header, and it'll get you to the page where it tells you how the Memoir Project works. And what I want to offer is to anyone who mentions this interview, I want to offer a 1-hour free coaching session for you to talk about your memoir idea, the memoir you're working on, the memoir you finished, or anything about memoir that you want to explore in that 1 hour, so that I can support you in getting to the next step, whatever that step is. I want as many of our stories out there. And so it's a 1-hour free coaching session to talk about your memoir and where you want to go with it, and your purpose and focus, whatever questions you want to bring.
That's a really generous offer, Carol.
Oh, thank you. Well, I'm excited to hear more from people. So you can email me, or you can go to my website and contact me there, or you can email me at cburbank@storyweaving.com.
I will put that information in the comments on this live, so you don't have to, try to write it down while you're watching the interview, but look for that in the comments. And so, Carol, before we wrap up today, what is a final piece of wisdom that you'd like to share about this whole memoir process?
The final thing I want to say about it is this: it's easier than it looks. It's easier to fall in love with our own stories than we think. It's not selfish. It's not arrogant. It's actually all about falling in love with our path in the world. And once we get to the point where we embrace and value our stories, it's easy to share them. And writing a memoir is a great way to open up the heart of appreciation for yourself, and to get others to help appreciate you back. So it's easier than it looks. It doesn't take a long time. It isn't hard. All the little things in our heads would say, oh no, I don't have time, whatever. All those excuses, you can just put them aside, because it's fun.
Because really deep down inside, we love to talk about ourselves.
Yes, and we want to talk.
You're a captive audience.
We want to talk meaningfully about it.
Yes.
We don't just want to blah, blah, blah. Nobody does that. And we do it, but we want to share the thought that's our pearl.
Yeah. And sometimes we have to do the blah, blah, blah first, and then
yep. And I help them get through the blah, blah, blah. And then they say, oh, this is the pearl. This is the pearl. And once you know the pearl, you are wealthy in story.
Wow. Thank you. This was wonderful. I just love everything that you said. And I thank you so much for sharing your work and giving us some really great reasons and inspiration for why and how we might want to write a memoir. Because like most people, I've always thought of memoirs as, famous people write memoirs, or people, write them for famous people, right? And no, not true. In fact, books I would have never considered a memoir that I've loved actually were a memoir. I thought they were a self-help book or a spirituality book or something, but there's stories within it make it more than that.
Exactly.
So thank you for helping me to reframe that in my mind.
Sure. You're welcome. And thank you for having me on your talk show.
You're so welcome. And I want to thank anyone who's joining us for the Real Women, Real Purpose talk show live in the On Purpose Woman magazine and global community Facebook page. If you love this interview and you want to share it with your friends, it will be on our YouTube channel in the next 48 hours. So go over to On Purpose Woman Global Community on YouTube, subscribe, and sign up for notifications if you want to be notified every time we put up a new video. There are over 100 inspiring, informative, and fun shows for you to watch on the channel. And in May, we started sharing videos of the speakers for our On Purpose Woman Global Community Zoom gatherings. We have 13 other great shows lined up for you in July and August, and 4 of them are next week. On July 12th, Catherine Yarborough, the other host of the Real Women, Real Purpose talk show, will talk with Mary Jane Charles about how to gather your last wishes. On July 13th, I'll chat with steamy romance novelist Dora Vick Shapiro on Summer Heat, Cool Down with a Juicy Read. On July 14th, Catherine will speak with Peg Duchesne about how words matter with your marketing. And on Friday, I'll talk with certified divorce coach Marnie Simpson about divorce coaching and how you can get it right from the start. A busy week for sure, with lots of diverse topics. You can always find out what's coming up for the Real Women, Real Purpose talk show by going to www.opwgc.com. That's my website, and clicking on the On Purpose Woman magazine. Look for the table of contents and you'll see the Real Women, Real Purpose talk show that has all the July and August topics. So I want to thank you again for watching the Real Women, Real Purpose talk show, and go take a look at everything that we've got going on. Thank you.